Můžem. Dobré ráno, good morning to everyone. Welcome to the third day of the International Teaching Week. We are in the middle of our endeavor towards the end, towards the Friday. And today I have some amendments for our program. We had to change slightly today's program in order to meet some expectations of our guests and our needs, but you can orient yourself very easily because today early morning is going to start with Dejan Donev from Skopje. Another one is Risto Solunchev and Paromita Bosse, which is from India, will speak tomorrow morning. So today we are expecting first speaker Dejan Donev, then Risto Solunchev, and the third one is going to be Damian Guzek, who had been already speaking yesterday morning. So today I would like to welcome our two guests from south of Europe, or eastern south part of Europe, Dejan Donev and Risto Solunchev from Skopje. And the first speaker, as you already see on the screen, there is Dejan Donev, full professor at the Institute of Philosophy, at the Faculty of Philosophy in Skopje. He's interested in ethics and especially in media ethics. Beside his experience in different kinds of media, today he is the one who is going to speak about the media ethics. So Dejan, thank you very much for your coming, and now the floor is yours, and I'm looking forward for your speech and presentation.
Okay, the floor is mine. I'm not going to dance, but still. Last year I was singing Beatles, you know, during the panel discussions. So, good morning, everyone. It's nice to hear good words about yourself from the other persons. I didn't knew that, but it's a nice experience after all. Yes, why I teach ethics, history of ethics, bioethics, and etc. on the Institute of Philosophy, Department of Philosophy, on the Faculty of Philosophy. But why media ethics? Maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I was teaching for a decade about media and journalistic ethics on the Faculty of Law, because in Skopje, in Macedonia, under the University of St. Cyril and Methodius, the Faculty of Law only has a department for journalism, media, and communication. And I was teaching ethics in journalism 1, media ethics and philosophy of media as well. After having 15 years of career as a journalist in the printed media, TV, and especially my favorite one, the radio journalism. So that's why I want to speak about today, about the two-way link that has to be there between the ethics and the journalism, and especially about the significance of ethics for journalism and journalism for ethics as well. You will see why in the next 30 minutes to hour. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to interrupt me, because maybe it's better for a discussion at the moment than having a discussion after after my presentation, as it is. So let me start with the thing that is already known as well. I think you know it. It means that what is ethics? Ethics is a... Okay, you can see. Yeah. Ethics is a philosophical consideration of morality as one of the forms of human action, while its general function consists in understanding the moral phenomenon, which is derived from a wider context of understanding the essence of man, his position in the world, third thing, in human society, and the last thing, as well as in a man's relation with his own humanity. Among the many domains of that human activity, which are interwoven with ethical issues in modern society, the media, especially journalism and information as it is, occupy a primary importance because, according to Daniel Courtney, Ethics of Information, according to the amount of the time that modern man devotes to them, the mass media is on the third place, behind work and sleep. If you divide 24 hours by 3, so you will have 3 parts of 8 hours to sleep, to go to work, and to the mass media, especially the third part. This is because today the media has an irreplaceable role in the modern democratic and pluralistic society. They are one of the factors that enable its functioning in general. There is no democracy without media. Despite the fact that all values have been relativized in these societies, the question of ethical values and criteria according to which events in the world of social communication could and especially should be managed and valued is raised again. So that is why the debate about the morality of media and journalistic practice and theory is inevitable, because, especially because of their great effectiveness. It entails a great degree of responsibility, because journalism always comes at the service of different interests, as you can see today, nowadays. And this, together with the formal and content quality of the media offer, is one of the most important evaluation criteria. What to choose, what to see, what to hear, what to read. This is especially why we are forced to apply the judgment of reason and moral judgment in this area as well. The first postulate of the connection between the ethics and the journalism. Otherwise, the media without moral becomes a gathering place of sneaky passions, an image of a social chaos in which continuity is interrupted and the system of social norms is destabilized, and within together the modern society by itself. Why? Because the public is the moral keeper of the ethical values inside one society. So, considering the statement about today's society as a society of spectacles, like Bourdieu says, it is almost irrelevant whether one emphasizes the element that marks today's society as an entertainment society, or the one that marks it like information society, because it is too obvious and it is clear that the role of the media has become, this is very important, the main engine of shaping and reshaping the world, also of life, according to the power that they have by itself now. That is why today they should be considered as a very important factor in the directing and creation of social processes, and no longer as a secondary social phenomena, nor as an ordinary partner in the social development by itself. Besides, the same applies also for the classical media, newspaper, radio, television, as well as to the new medias, especially the internet, which is in the concrete situation can represent a paradigmatic example of this new situation if you want to see it. So, considering the media as a communicative place for the exchange of society's knowledge about itself, the media is a so-called social agency that reflects the process of social practice through which society can only be constituted. In this context, it is justified when it is claimed that in society, the directions for any form of movement are created through the media, vertically through historical development, and horizontally through its social diversity. This is not my words. This is the words of the famous Thomas Bauer in the Media for the Open Society book. This is even more so due to the fact that, very important one, that the media is not only an apparatus, an organization or a group of people, or let's say composition, but above all, it is a dispositive for creating conversational worlds that cultural communicative environment in which the contents, meaning, and collective gestures that perform change. About this, my colleague Risto Solunčev will speak later on, Rage Against the Machine. So created through the interaction of politics, society, economy, and technology, they rebuilt a system through journalism and the public, which directly influenced the factors of individual from one side and from the other side the collective as well. Also private from one side and from the other side the public life by itself, as Thomas Bauer said. So in this case, it's not only about the question of the relationship between the media and social movements, but also about the question of the very constitution of man, which changes by itself under the influence of the media. So you can, how you can define yourself today? By what you hear, what you read, and what you can see through the media. So in this context, the practice currently shows that coming out from the shadows, Minerva's owl founds an enormous influence of the mass media, of the media general, and mass media especially, on the modern man. At work are processes of turning the public into a mass, citizens into a viewers into a passive workers that the media corporations sells to each other, together with their production houses, shows, media houses, and etc. For example, in my country, in Macedonia, there was a famous TV long time ago that was called A1, very, very popular. And they have very big production of shows, debate shows, very interesting one, and also a production of a TV series. And because it was the biggest one, very influential, they decided to close it on a different way. And they did close it. So after that, what happened on the market? Other TV stations bought, but not only the TV series and the debate shows and etc. They bought the viewers. So, why? Because the TV already, A1, already turned the public into a mass, citizens into a viewers, and viewers into a passive workers, so it was much, much easier just to buy and sell the public. Because the other TV houses, the path was already open. In our cases, that was the TV Citel and TV Alpha, it was called. And they, in a very short time, they became like the TV A1. Not with the debate shows, but according to the TV shows, TV series. They bought a final product, passive workers. So, therefore, it is extremely important and necessary to openly discuss these issues again, especially the meaning of the phenomena of ethics and morality in journalism and their interconnection and intervening. The fact that at the same time the practice of journalism as a profession, remember this, journalism as a profession, also initiated many other issues where we are more concerned about the nature and possible solutions of these issues that appears in practice than with the theoretical definition of the profession, speaks of the need to consider these issues once again. Is the journalism a profession? What is professionalism? So namely, the nature of the professionalism is at the same time vague and flexible, relative, especially due to the changes of old professions such as law, medicine, as well as the emergence of the new professions that penetrate and fight for the status that professionalism brings by itself. We are talking about professions such as education, social work, nursing, and even journalism. 15 to 20 years ago in Macedonia, there was a very big discussion about, is the journalism actually a profession? Why? Because everyone can write. Everyone can do an interview. Why? Because you can ask something. You don't need a special education for that. Even more, like my late grandfather would say, what is journalism? Any fool guy can be a journalist. Just to have a free time and microphone, nothing else. That's why he used to watch 5 types of daily news on 5 different TV stations. Why? Because 5 different fools are speaking about the same thing, but from a different angle, the angle of their interest. Even more, when I was finishing high school and I have to decide what to study for faculty, you know, and there was inside debate in me what to study, what. I like journalism very much, but according to my grandfather, I'm just a fool guy, nothing more. So, but still, journalism is my love. Journalism is my passion. I'll do the journalism. And I went to the Faculty of Law, and there was a very nice lady, dragon lady, on the student question, how do you call, administration, dragon lady, that tried to yell at me, do this, do that. I said, no journalism, I can be without this. Even more, my teacher in the high school of philosophy said, saw me that day when I came from Skopje to Negotino, to my birth town, and the first subject that I had for that day was philosophy, classes of philosophy, and I didn't enter inside the building. I was outside, thinking what to do now. I'm not going to sign journalism, what to do? And I'm trying to think, and she approached me and said, come on, let's go inside. There is a philosophy lecture I'm teaching. Come on, you are the best, blah, blah, blah. And I said, let's go inside. And I said, I can't, I'm thinking. Don't interrupt me. Okay, can I help? Maybe, I said. What are you thinking about? What to sign up to study? What to sign up to study? But you love journalism. Yes, I love journalism, but I don't like Teta Donka, the Aunt Donka that was working on the administration. And she said, just write philosophy. It's the same. Why? In the national TV, 70% of the journalists are philosophers, teachers of philosophy, with degree from the philosophy. At that time, finishing philosophy meant that you can be a teacher of philosophy by unwritten rule, and also you can be a journalist. Why? Because you are a little bit smarter than the fool guy just called journalist, according to my grandfather. So, how can we apply this when we speak for journalism, but as a profession? What does it mean, professionalism, inside? And where is the connection of ethics inside this story? Maybe the best question is, where is the place of ethics inside this story? And the right answer would be, nothing without ethics, because nothing without professionalism. Professionalism means, apart from the ethics called deontology, so nothing without philosophy. In this case, we are talking about professions such as already mentioned education, social work, nursing, even journalism, when an extremely important thing that unites all the requirements for the status of profession is the degree of the expressed concern for ethical standards in the performance of the profession. And that is the right answer. There is the connection. There is the right answer of my thesis. I can finish now. But there's something more. In relation to journalism, skeptics would say that ethics and journalism are incompatible. But even if journalists do not meet standards in their behavior, what this fact shows is the importance, not the irrelevance, of ethics inside the profession. How come? This is especially true for journalism because the greater part of its practice must be described and analyzed by means of a series of concepts which are essentially ethical. Terms like freedom, terms like objectivity, truth, honesty, privacy, and etc. Even democracy, in a context in which a large number of discussions take place inside the media, is actually an ethical term because it refers to the right for the best form of the political and social organization as well. As Chadwick would say in Ethical Issues in Journalism and Media, 1998, a book. So hence, it can rightly be concluded that ethics is inseparable from journalism, while ethical discussions must be a part of understanding of journalism, its practice and its problems also. In addition to these previous paragraphs, the knowledge that we live in a world of information and informational society as well, where the possession of information means being up to date with the development, because it is the most important product on which the maintenance and quality of life depends, is also confirmed. With that, those who professionally deal with the information and informing as a process become significant and very important, and the journalistic profession is on its way to receive the greatest honor and credit, to become a holy one. The sanctity of this profession is something that is extremely bonding and requires the two powers that the professional has: the power of knowledge, the expertise that you have. So you cannot be anymore just any fool guy with a microphone, and the power of the consciousness, to be in harmony and to complete and intervene with each other. If you have these two elements, these two powers, you can do the journalism, the right journalism. The power of knowledge, without the power of consciousness, can be and often is very, very dangerous. Therefore, the journalistic profession requires intellectual, professional, and moral qualities. In the terms of moral qualities that I want to speak about, it is instructive to say that these two areas of human opinion and action, in their conception and exclusion in reality, are most immediately connected as an idea and action, and this interweaving gets its validity and reality precisely through the notion of the public and its ethical character by itself. You need the public. She is the keeper of the ethical values. Without her, you can't do anything. So namely, the public is not possible without a moral foundation. Just as the public needs the moral dimension, because it represents an opinion that calls for values, especially moral values and ways of behaving people. In other words, in the modern idea of the public, there is the general view orientation for the free decision of the individual. Also, morality needs the public dimension, because the modern right of man to be recognized in his right to internal moral convictions makes sense only if the individual presents the content of his moral convictions in public communication with other people. You need somebody by your side to talk, to speak, to spread the idea. Very successful, sufficient, very vivid example of their intervening and completing is the famous text of the novelist Émile Zola, I accuse, j'accuse. You know what it is? Just raise your hand if you know. It's not something to be ashamed. We learn every day. Okay, now I'm going to play a video of 4 or 5 minutes just to see what it is. What it is. What it is the letter to the President of the Republic by Émile Zola, with which he publicly declares himself in defense of the French officer Alfred Dreyfus, accused without justification. There are several versions of the film, The Life of Émile Zola. I will play the best one, from 1938. It's black and white. Don't try not to look the subtitle if you don't know the Chinese language. I only found it in Chinese with the Chinese subtitle because I don't have that program to cut part from one video material, a small parts to play it for my students anymore. I lost the previous laptop, or it was broke down. It doesn't matter. So I don't have it anymore together with the program. I found it on YouTube, and I want to play it just to see what it is. What it is this. There is the letter. Who is Alfred Dreyfus and why Émile Zola is on his side. You have to watch the film. It's genius. 2.5 hours, black and white. Émile Zola, not Émile Zola, Émile Mooney is the main actor that received the Oscar for that role in the film in 1938. Of course, I have the pirate version. I was downloading for 2 weeks, but still I have it. And every year to my students during the teaching period on the Faculty of Law with the journalist, I always play the movie, the second part of the movie, and they always have to write an essay on that theme. That was just to know what it is, because most of them didn't know at that time, and still doesn't know now. So it is about an open letter that was published on January the 13th, 1898, on the front page of a daily, Paris daily, Aurora. It was called the letter, not the letter, the newspaper, very famous one at that time. Zola addressed the same to the President of France at that time and accused his government of anti-Semitism and the unlawful jailing of Alfred Dreyfus, a French army general staff officer who was sentenced to long life prison for espionage. Zola pointed out juridical errors and lack of serious evidence. The letter was printed on the front page, as you can see on the newspaper, and caused a stir in France and abroad. That's why Zola was prosecuted at the same time for libel and found guilty on February 23rd, 1898, and to avoid the serving time in prison, he escaped, or he was moved to live a short time in England and returned home in France, in Paris, in June 1899, becoming one of the best-known newspaper articles in the world. J'accuse, I accuse, became a common expression of outrage against someone powerful, whether the merits of the accusations. So the same example is taken as a model of ethical journalism. And rightly so, because it is a newspaper article and was aimed at a direct and broad communication with the public. That's why the connection of the ethics with the journalism, or better to say, journalism with the ethics. Without her, it's not going to be anymore a profession, not going to be anything seriously as it is. So I'm going to just, how to do this? It is a crime. no. So, that's it. I don't know if you understood, because, wow. Because the sound is not so good, and it was with a Chinese subtitle. I didn't found in English. Maybe it was better to try to find a little bit longer, maybe, but still, with English. The main point, the main story is that Esterhazy, a guy, an officer at that time in the French army, sold and military information to the Germans, and that's why the French lost their battle. And to cover up everything, he put an evidence, so-called evidence, on the desk on another officer, Alfred Dreyfus. It was not selected randomly, but specifically. Why? Because he was a Jew. At that time, that was a problem in France. And they planned everything except for the existence and the actions of Émile Zola. Émile Zola discovered that, tried to defend it, and to conclude why so many times he said, it is a crime. Yes, it is a crime to have, with today's language, it is a crime to have fake news and not having the right one. It is a crime to have disinformation, actually. Why? Because it costs someone's life, in this case, of Dreyfus affair. To continue, what we can not conclude but suggest is that the media can also be considered at the same time as an ethical agent, like the case of Émile Zola, especially because all the open questions of the modern moral existence of man are reflected in them. Journalists are no longer just the collectors of news, full guy with a microphone, but they are expected to investigate, to be critical of the world they live in, and also proactive, which means to advance the public debate on topics of general interest, like the Roman idea of forumization. Growing up, very important one, growing up to a subject of the moral process, they are no longer just transmitters of morality, interesting, touching, virtuous, and other ethical events, ideas, messages, and lessons. With that, the journalists confirm the thesis that moralization in journalism is clearer, more prominent, and more regular one than in other creative genres. Namely, the moral lessons, for example, which is our integral part of many literacy attempts. It is not only present even in journalistic approaches and texts, but is very often a constructive, decorative, and effective part of them, wherein fabulous the lesson is always at the end. There are historical journalistic texts in the most important world's media that exactly begins with it. At the front page, like this example of Émile Zola. In the first paragraphs also. Maybe the actions of the journalists are more important in moral sense, like the example with the New York Society of Journalists, which every year gives an award, not any kind of award for ethical journalism. of promoting some good idea and implementation of the same, or discovering something that is immoral. So, therefore, it can be rightly stated that today journalism has replaced and carries out the most moralizing tendency and forms, which is also visible from the expectations in journalistic reports and comments, which requires seriousness and an ethical attitude, usually critical one. This is normal because journalism is one of the most prominent professions today, a calling that will probably become sacred in this new. It's not new, but still 20 years, 22 years, third millennium. The assumption derives from the importance of journalism as a profession, which is defined as a social activity that arises from certain historical conditions as a way, form, and means of communication over long distance and between large communities, while its function is to inform the public about all important facts from reality necessary for understanding the world we live in today, without which human behavior cannot be effectively realized. And even more so, because journalists themselves are the eyes and the ears that see and listen for the public and for the public spirit. They are transmitters, of course, mediators, and critic in society and for the society, in the state and for the state. They convey the messages, of course, mediate as an outer shell between the government and the citizens, and critically evaluate the public messages as well as social and life problems. That is why, very important, ethics and journalism go together, hand by hand, as an expression of the moral needs of humanity and the spiritual power of journalism by itself. All this confirms the basic position that ethics and journalism are areas that today must be mutually understood and completed in their practice. The fact that journalism is the first draft of the history, in this sense, represents an interpretation of the content of life and also the interference and encroachment in the flow of life. That is, it represents the meaning of living as building and values of existence, producing a number of different consequences that are far-reaching by their importance. That is why it can be said that ethics is one of the basic substrates of the knowledge and information. In other words, the truth and the attitude that journalism finds in ethics an inspiration and strength for a consistent and creative performance is promoted as well. In this context, if the truth is that media, the medium between journalism and ethics, then all journalistic public activities and its public responsibilities are confirmed or failed the test of truth. In other words, precisely here lies the connection or that big end between ethics and journalism. In this so-called ethical truth implies a big thing that we are usually not aware of it. If you spread the possibility of life around you, and that means fighting for the real life, then the same possibility and not a necessity like an external accident will give you come back like boomerang as your own opportunity to live as a human being, as an active participant in the creation of that shared life with somebody else. Everything else, sooner or later, elevated. Meaning as a lie. Meaning as a most obvious self-description or boomerang. In this case, we have no right to complain of all occasions and misfortunes around us. Why? Because we have to be an active one. This is also confirmed from another side. Let's say, in the need of humanity's ethical struggle for journalism as one that will responsibly shape knowledge and spread valuable spiritual and ethical attitude. In the social and spiritual sphere, toward which the journalist's passion for knowledge, information, and communication is directed, events and tendencies with ethical significance intersect. Moral dilemmas boiled through them. The committed approach to them and the virtuous handling of them by a developed, responsible, and moral journalism strengthens the reality with a great impulse toward progress. The neglect of the moral problem by journalism, its irresponsibility or rejection of ethical engagement, as well as intrusions inside the journalism and etc. And in this sense, the loss of its ethical weight are a serious impulse toward the regression of the society by itself. Oh, no. This is why it is considered justified the knowledge that, very important one, through the position and significance of the journalistic profession in a society, its openness and democracy can be assessed. Respect and guarantee of free opinion, expressions, association, and free life in general. It says a lot that the creation of a state, for example, and movement of a society is also reflected in the media, which means that democracy before society is expressed inside the media, its structure and culture. It, as such, requires good and vividly expressed journalism, ethically founded, comprehensively engaged, human, and very important, a valuable one. Without its high moral standing, it is an illusion to expect a good functioning and development of the democracy as we know. So therefore, if we want an open, free, democratic society which will determine itself, then we are more than responsible for its realization through the promotion of the culture of communication that we developed in the media and with them through journalism and its main moral subject, and that is journalist. Not the fool guy with the microphone, again, but the journalist. This is possible. I will speak tomorrow, no, on Friday, I will speak about the journalist as a moral subject, the crisis of the journalist as a moral subject, and how to get over it. For now, I would just say that it is possible, this is possible, only when theoretically and practically we make an effort to develop abilities, readiness, as well as to pay attention to ethics, which is not measured by quantity but by quality. Words of the famous Thomas Bauer. Namely, this model of thinking about an open, free, democratic society places the state in the background because it contains the effort to understand itself as an absolute place of power, governance, and influence, while favoring the idea of self-responsible civil society. In such a vision, argument, word, communication, media, and journalism get a social and as creators of the society, not just copy-paste what happens inside the society. They are creators inside the society. Key position in theory and practice as well. In this context, journalists are often called how? Come on, people. Okay. Fourth government. Fourth part of the government, maybe. Which, together with the legislative, executive, juridical, they are the journalists, the fourth one, controls and monitors society and what happens in it, and also in the other three parts. They are called, in this sense, they are called what? What kind of dogs? Watchdogs of democracy, whose main role is to expose all bad things, irregularities, negativity, the deviations, so that the evil could be eradicated. The journalist, of course, has the right, but also the obligation to follow and read up all social events and phenomena, to point out the difficulties and weakness, to affirm the true values, to criticize, and always only to extend out to the extent outlined by the rules of the journalistic code of ethics. Any departure from this framework of behavior is a disastrous for the profession, but also for establishing a balance in information as well, and maybe even most important part. In this sense, it is of great importance to openly discuss these issues, especially the phenomenon of ethics and morality in politics and journalism. Each contribution strengthens truth, understanding, and dialogue as means of accepting arguments, and at the same time it is a strengthening of the overall social ethics. The well-known description of journalists as the first ambassadors of peace and friendship, you know that definition, but also the first sowers of intolerance, actually speaks of this. Disinformation, fake news. They establish bridges of cooperation, but they also are trigger in starting all social misunderstandings, misbuildings, and etc., both internal and in relation to others. This includes the irreplaceable social and ethical role of the media and the journalist. So in the context of this lecture, I will finish up with the recommendation of the third American president, Jefferson, who asked what, here is the guy, who asked what he would choose, a strong state and a weak media, or a weak state or a strong media. He opted for the latter one. He opted for the weak state and the strong media. Why? Because we have to improve our journalism ethically if we want it to develop in a good and correct directness, and vice versa. That was his explanation on the question what he will choose if he has the right to do. So I'll stop here. I know I finished a little bit earlier, but I finished it with one reason, to discuss later. I have one option, that is, when I was a student, I had a cup for coffee, you know. And there was a very nice slogan, if you prefer, and I see that you prefer during the lecture, you're not asking something or try to include. The slogan was, maybe it is much too early to start talking, leave a note during the pause, the break. Or the second option is, let's start talking. let's debate, let's try to find a solution. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I'm an ethiician. So thank you.
So I will be the first fool who is speaking on microphone. Oh, is there anyone who would like to? Fine. Thank you very much, Dan, for your presentation. I would like to quote from Emile Zola.
Okay.
But first, you have used a lot of hard words or sentences, like it is a crime, it is up to the journalists to be the moral agents of the society. Is there anyone who could even carry such a heavy burden on his or her shoulders? Could you give us an example?
As
Who
a
is doing,
journalist,
just wait a minute,
as a
who is doing his
participant?
job well? Because in nowadays, and I would like to quote from the Emile Zola, can we accuse journalists that they are not doing their job very well, that it is a crime? Because for instance, right now we are talking, or in a discourse and in a contemporary media, you can see a lot of interesting topics and very important ones. But on the other hand, everyone is expecting or looking forward to launch a World Cup, the football World Cup in, I think it's in Dakar. And the organizers are accused of many crimes, social injustice, enslaving people, and so on. But we are not talking, I think, enough about that. Can we accuse also those journalists that they are not doing their job very well? Or who are the agents or moral agents within the society? So that's my question. And thank you very much for your presentation. And I must confess that I haven't seen the movie yet. So it's my homework to watch the movie.
Otherwise, I have to come next year to
Okay.
give it to you.
Next time. Thank you for your presentation, and I'm
very
expecting your answer.
Very interesting question. Let's say very essential question for the journalism as a profession and for the journalist as a moral subject. So I already gave an answer. Why? Because you have to look the journalist as a moral subject, not an object. What does it mean? It means that he has to carry out a very, very big burden. Like any other profession, also in journalism, there is a responsibility. After 1970, Hans Jonas and the concept of responsibility, taking care of something, and that something, it is called the future generations. We cannot make things better at the moment, but we can do it better for the next generation. Otherwise, why do we have kids? Why do we create families? That is one point. Another point is that through the percentage, through the scale of responsibility, if it is a bigger one, then the profession is more and more respected one. Let's say a holy one. You know? Why? Because of the level of responsibility. The level of the responsibility at the same time, not only as a journalist, we as a journalist, but generally, we as a subject, moral subject, defines us. There is a new type of ethics, new type of responsibility. Ethics of responsibility is now on the stage, if we want our humanity to survive. Journalists failed on that, but not the whole part of the journalism as a profession. But mostly, in several segments, they failed. Why? Because they didn't change the metrics of acting. And they didn't change it because on a theoretical level, they didn't develop it. Even more, if it is developed by Thomas Bauer and etc., They didn't put it inside the practice. They didn't accept it. Because instead of, let's say, I have an example from Macedonia, instead of developing investigating journalism as a form, we managed to do another kind of journalism, citizenship journalism. What my grandfather would say, every fool with a microphone. In these days, every fool with a telephone. Oh, there is a fire, take a picture and send it to the newspaper or some other form of a media. And they will do it at the same time. They will publish it. And you will get some money and reward. So everyone was encouraged to be a journalist. Instead of that, we had at that time possibility to develop an investigator. Not every person to be a journalist, but investigator. That means journalists on a higher level, with a higher level of responsibility, that will seek for the truth at the moment. We have now, how it's called, IRL, I think. IRL, a network. It's not a media, I don't know how to call it, a group of journalists, free journalists, that are investigators. They are spending 1 year, 2 years, something like that, for one story. Yes, and after that, it's a good story. They investigate all the aspects. For example, their first story, people are still gossiping, not speaking. Now they are gossiping about that. First story was our famous cardio clinic, Jean Mitrev, during the pandemic, COVID-19. They only accept patient if you have 20,000 euros. Otherwise, you can die outside the hospital. I don't care. That is not so. It is evil, but not so, wow, terrible. Comparing to the other argument inside the story. They did, in 21st century, they did a laboratory experimentation without signed consent, informed consent of the patient. Most of them died. They covered it up. And now the story went, wow, we also have this in our country? Doctors are experimenting on the people? I know that. They don't know. That is the main job, but with arguments, taking responsibility for that, not just giving up the information. You have to investigate. That is one of the possible ways how not to live the era of the death of the journalism, but as a possible way how the journalism to transform in a better profession. One of the 4 governments, dog watch and etc. Instead of decision taking, they have to be a decision making. They have to make decisions, not just to take action, just to take an action in the practice. First of all, they have to be asked about this and that. What do you mean? What is this good? Let's do this. It's not about the owner's interest inside of one story or information. Let's say, ono što го збројавме за LGBT и подкастот твој, може како пример? Нема да споменувам ништо. Не, окей. Не, kao general tip. There is a large number of examples. I have to consult him, because what I'm going to say now we discussed in the car coming to Olomouci. I have to have a permission. In short, very short. Instead of classical, we have new media, social media, and etc. And usually very popular one, the podcasts. And somebody will call you. Let's do interview on this team, this, etc. And after that, where is my interview? Where is this and that? I forgot to press the button record. That is the another excuse why his owner didn't allow him to go in public. Why? Because he's the owner. Where is the journalist? He's a nice guy, everything, but nice guy outside the job. But I'm asking inside the job. Where it is? What is his responsibility? What is his the true realization of his abilities by profession? Where it is? He is just a transmitter, nothing else. That is not the true face of the journalist anymore. I think I answered.
Thank you. Someone comment or question? No? Thank you very much once again.
No, one.
There is a question. Very short.
Hello. I'm just wondering if you think that Russian journalists are journalists or just propagandists?
Professionally or private? Which
like
kind? No.
Who works on government?
No. Because we are short of time, I'm asking, you want my professional opinion or private opinion? That's why professional or private. Private outside. Professional given short.
Let it be professional opinion.
Professional opinion. It's hard to discuss during the war. It's very hard. Why? Because the journalistic deontology doesn't work at that times. The main responsibility is to inform objectively. And always there will be some who will change the picture for somebody else's interest. Usually it goes like this.
There was the propaganda 9 years ago. Nothing has changed.
Yeah, but propaganda is not born 8 years ago. Propaganda is born with the men together. There is just moments when it comes to the top and then vanish a little bit or going under, and after that it's again. You can see it again and again. Why? Because the main essence of the propaganda is to do that. When it's necessary to do, you will do it and you will see it. This is the propaganda. In other times, when there is no war or something like that, you will see another form of informing as well. Not the propaganda. She will go under. But in times like this, war and etc., you will see the classical form of propaganda. So it's not about the propaganda from 8 years or now.
So were there in Russia professional journalists in government, like governmental journalists, 9 years ago?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much once again, and thank you for another lecture starts at 9:50. early morning show, because another lecture we are expecting from Risto Solunchev is an idea of revolution in the contemporary pop culture. And I'm going to reveal just a slight part of your private life, that Risto, he is not just a philosopher and a professor at the university at the same department as Dejan Donev, but he is also a member and maybe a leading singer of a pop group, hip-hop group. Sorry, it's a hip-hop.
Oh, it's not.
Yeah.
Well, it's not classical people. It's more sort of
Yeah,
experimental.
you send me some links of your music. Yeah, I can share it with you. So it's very refreshing to hear different hip hop than the Czech one. I think the most popular Czech hip hop group is Prague Union. Is it? Isn't it? Is there anyone who is interested in hip hop? No. Okay, we will talk about that later. The floor is yours, and sorry for keeping your time.
I give thanks to Professor Jaroslav and to my colleague Dejan, because 8:30 it's too early for me. Also 10 o'clock it's too early for me. Probably after 15 o'clock. Yes, here. But we switch with Dejan because we are colleagues and we studied philosophy together at the same department in Skopje. So universe, it's quite a thing, because I was planning to give 2 lectures. One lecture about the idea of revolution and how it's mediated through the pop culture, especially music. And in the realm, with the focus of the social and political domain and philosophy. And the second lecture, I was planning to speak about biopolitical conditions of freedom and existential method of Søren Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher, poet, and theologian. But the universe. So now we have in the program, if you read, it's the same title. Little bit changed, but it's the same title. So I said, let's listen the universe and change the plan. So I will speak now about the revolution, how it's mediated through the contemporary pop culture, especially music. And on Friday, I would love to talk about the possible connections of the individualism that streams from music and the public sphere. For instance, if you have some idea that you reflect through the art, is it possible to neglect the public sphere? Did musicians and artists realized some idea into the public sphere, into the social reality and public reality? Probably not. So this is the entrance into this part of music. So at the beginning, I will start with one song called Revolution. Was never published because Rage Against the Machine, together with two great bands, they decided not to publish the song. But the song is in the YouTube and you can hear the song. It's very instructive. The refrain is very instructive because it's some kind of entrance into the anxiety of the contemporary pop culture and music about the value of the idea of revolution and its possible forms through the social reality. So let's shake things a little bit. it's a demo thing. Okay, the song is very long for today criteria of pop music. So my main question is, can pop culture and special music shape the revolutionary consciousness by itself without social and political engagement and reality? They didn't publish on any official album. It's a song from 1993, considering their own aesthetical criteria. The lyrical lament of the refrain is very instructive. You can kill the revolutionary, but you can't kill the revolution. This is a quote from a Black Panther member, Fred Hampton, who was killed the 4th of December, 1969 in his house by the Chicago police. So this is a quote, but it's very instructive. You can kill the revolutionary, but you can't kill the idea of a revolution. Here we have an idea of the revolution, because I'm speaking about the revolution not as an individual revolution. We change through life a lot. That is a revolution if you compare it to life. It's an absolute changing. We are talking about the revolution. Here we have an idea of revolution as a constant change, not only by radical means, but rather with radical meaning and efficiency in constant historical perspective. In deeper sense, this song implies an idea of revolution as efficient, like a kind of virus which survives the current conditions and continues to live in some kind of postponed virulence, waiting to become active, only using a human body, in this case, the body of the revolutionary, as a host, as a secondary source in which the idea transits to its occurrence in the social and political reality. Revolution by itself makes the revolutionary, and we see hope that the idea is stronger than its keeper and barrier and surpasses his life. At the same time, the song reflects a condition of complete entrance into passivity, quietism, resignation, and belief that something ever would come in near future despite the objective causations that determine the revolution. And all of this is followed by existential anxiety that explodes on a reference in the hysterical voice of Jacques de la Rocha. One of the conditions for the revolution is the very revolutionary consciousness. And this is not something that have phenomenological perspective. What about the revolutionary consciousness? Is this postulate that the revolution is a life concept without the revolutionary is something unquestionable? For me, it's quite questionable. So we see that idea of revolution, it's mediated through the music. But how you will create a condition for revolution into the social reality only mediate through the music. So the relation of music with politics is very instructive. So let's try to capture this relation. And first, we must clarify the nature of this relation. Is it outer, accidental relation? Or we could argue that music ontologically implied some kind of political ethos or ethos, like old Greek philosophers use the word ethos. Ethics comes from ethos. Ethos is not something that is the finished system of morality, which you, by which you judge actions of people, but it's some kind of self-care, self-creation. You self-created, and now you have ethos or ethos. So my question is there a kind of political ethos that doesn't derive from the outside world, but it's implied into the artist? For me, it's completely unquestionable that one musician could be a politically active, to be a member of party, social, ideology, whatever. By the way, ideology doesn't rely on science. It relies on narration and discursive mannerism. And it implies our emotions, not our rationality. So, but it seems to me that this relation, that one musician can be a member of some party, of his or her profession and political, is not substantial. Namely, to say that his or her political engagement outcomes from the substance of music. What I mean by this kind of engagement doesn't differ from any other engagement. For instance, he or she could be equally a computer engineer or doctor and to have the same political engagement. This is a normal engagement that simply is based in pre-given political relevance, is a result of the social as such, and the production and reproduction of the socius. I accept the relevance of this, of the responsibility of the public person. It's simply that. I'm responsible as a public person. But I don't see the ontological relation and nexus, connection, link between the music, the musical, and political in this form of engagement. For instance, Bono from U2 is something like this. You have music on one side and political engagement on the other side. So we need to make some kind of phenomenological reduction to put something in brackets that transcend the outer relations of music and politics, and to get the real pure relation and most profound one to see whether music thus creates authentic political being by itself. The second modality of relation is Isaac de la Rocha and maybe Chuck D from Public Enemy. It's a very old band, but very revolutionary in hip-hop culture. The music directly reflects the political ideology of the authors. Two levels. First, the lyrics are political discourses, and they are bearing their political standpoints. And the music is used to support the semantic expressions of those political standpoints. So here we find some direct relation between music and politics. But if we continue to do the reduction, just to put aside outer elements and to focus on the inner, intrinsic element of politics in music, of this political ethos, we see that music plays a supporting role. There is no substantial relation because you could articulate your ideology in other forms of social relevance in more discursive and successful manners. Only thing that you have in music is undiscursive tropics as an emotional background. Second, pure musical aesthetical is something that is not visible when the semantic meaning of the words is here. Simply you are directed toward the doxology of the surface, and mainly the surface of the groups, masses, ethnicities, but groups in order to establish those same classes. The music is given a role in the social reality. Now we see some kind of inner essence in music, but the real being of music is put it aside. So let's hear. Okay. this is the second perspective. We have a music as a background to the emotional investment into the ideology of liberating people, mainly the black community in America, Afro-Americans. The second perspective. But we are going to the third perspective, because we don't see only if we use the lyric of Chuck D, rhythm is the rebel. So use the music to be background for your immediate idea of revolution through the lyrics. But the third perspective derives from this phenomenological reduction that I suggest on the beginning, to put what is outer into the brackets. And that is something which we could find if we have instrumental music in mind, or the time duration of creating the musical forms before the lyrics just come in. Playing sonatas on piano, evolving symphonies from one simple motif, or creating the new musical piece from 2 or 3 old records in the contemporary sampling culture. The pure musical is ontologically connected with the subjectivity, only with subjectivity. The social context and relevance of music is a displayed reality if we have in mind the musical in itself. Just to get this match between music and subjectivity, I'll use some analogy. I don't use PowerPoint presentation because we are dealing with words. Maybe we have all phases of humanity in us. So we want to be surrounded by pictures as the first civilization. But we are dealing with words. You study philosophy, theology, ethics. And when you have words, you are thinking. We are thinking through the words. So I don't use PowerPoint. I'm just on old school. Because we are speaking, we are listening each other, ourselves. So I'll use some analogy, a model for subjectivity metaphorically rooted in the world of synthesizers. For instance, what is the form of subjectivity that creates these pre-given conditions for music? I call it is called in analog synthesizer, subtractive synthesis. We read that in analog synthesizer, the basic sound generator is a waveform, you know, waveforms, triangle, sawtooth, square wave, you know, the simple one. One oscillator is creating the waveform, triangle, square wave, simple ones. And also our voices, the instruments, create the simple waveforms of the universe, its frequency. It's a physical thing. And every waveform creates its own rich harmonic content. In the creation of subjectivity, the basic generator of the self is a kind of waveform of a personal existence that creates almost infinite possibilities of existential experiences. There is no systematical finished form of subjectivity, despite the consideration of biological invariational patterns. Sorry, English is not my mother tongue. For instance, the great lecture about genealogy. We are only biological hypostasis. No, we are not only biological hypostasis. We also have personal hypostasis, the old word from Greek philosopher. We have personal being that use the biological content to do something with this content, not to be an effect of the biological content. That's the creation of. Biological content is something like a wave generator in analog synthesis. You have simple wave form. But what you do with the waveform after that? So behaviorism is the last frontier of murdered freedom. According to these Byzantine philosophical tropes, it's a complicated theological discussion between Western medieval philosophy and Eastern medieval philosophy. For instance, just shortly, in the idea of Trinity, Holy Trinity, according to Western medieval philosophy, the nature is barrier of the persons. And by Eastern philosopher, Byzantine philosopher, the person is the barrier of nature. So the person of God, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So it's a theological debate. But we leave that aside, and we use only that here, according to these Byzantine philosophical tropics, the nature is not carrier of the person, of prosopon. It's a Greek word. It means face, or something that is directed toward face. From that, it's persona. It's different meaning. It means per se. I'm living as a persona. I'm living in me as subject per se. But this is person is a carrier of the nature. The nature could be recreated because of the very form of this subatomic structure of the subjectivity. There is no center, only a kind of waveform with a rich existential harmonic content, like in analog synthesizers. So like in analog synthesis, the openness of this subatomic ontological waveform of the human existence produces filtering as a kind of subtraction of the freedom. This existential filtering then subtracts harmonics to create new variations of the original timbre that we all bear as a biological content. If we want to use the term soul as a philosophical metaphysical ground point, we might say that a soul is nothing more than multiplied timbres, like in music, of the inner waveform generator, its variations and oscillations. What is a soul? If we want to make analogy with analog synthesis. So authentic musical substance emerges directly from this ontological region of the self. So let's see what I mean by this. And this, let's say, instrumental music that do not refer to the lyrics, because we are close related to lyrics. And we listen music, for instance, moll is sad, mood, and dur in music, harmony, it's joyful and something like that. But it's emotional because we are connected with lyrics. If someone sings about sad love, then we said, oh, this music is sad. But music in itself, it's not sad or joy. It's a form of tones, interplaying between tones and forms of tones. So let's hear. So what does it mean? There is no semantic meaning because there are no words. It's only a pure interplay between tones and forms of the tones. It's a pure musical being. So, what is this pure musical being? It's something that it's aimed toward this self of the musician, to reproduce its ontology in the horizon of time duration, as a continuation of the filtering of the freedom that bears in ourselves as a personal being. Please.
Can you tell us, please, more about the mood of the music? Because you said that there is no sad or joy music, but there is a minor and major music. And a big half of the people would say that minor music is usually a sad one, isn't it?
I suggest to read two aesthetical approach. One is one German aesthetician and philosopher, Eduard Hanslick. The book is on musical beauty. And the other approach is also German philosopher, Ernst Bloch. For Eduard Hanslick, music is a pure being without no reference to the emotions of the people that listen music. Because probably I will say that some form of tones interplay creates a mood on us, absolutely. But does it means that it is objective structure of the interplay of the tones? Or mood is only our emotion? For instance, rain. It's a good thing, made some kind of mood, but the rain in itself, it's not joy or sad thing, or it's just a rain.
It's just statistically that a big half of people will feel sad. Then
Absolutely.
So I would say that this is objective. It can be objective because big half of people could feel sad or could feel joy if they say there's major music. So
Yes, but that's why I'm pointing out this reduction. Because absolutely, music produces the subjectivity of the author, but also because it lives into the public sphere. We listen music, and music continues to alter our subjective being. That's why Nietzsche said that without music he will probably not pass the youth.
don't you think that the big amount of subjective opinions creates one objective?
No.
Thank you.
Absolutely. But this is Ornette Coleman. It's very specific. Change of the century. I intentionally choose this improvisational manner. But it's only a duration. You don't have harmonic blocks that moves through A, B, C, bridge, C, B, A, and then you have a structure of sonata for something. It's a free stream of the interplays between tones. So this music, what I have in mind, this instrumental music, especially jazz, and this, for instance, folk music, in Balkans, the music is also very improvisational, very ecstatic, little bit like a jazz. And music is something as anti-politics and anti-ethics in sensu stricto, evolving the semantic richness of the old Greek word anti. Anti doesn't mean against, it means instead of. Anti means in original Greek meaning, instead of. So music is instead of something else. Because of this, of the subjectivity, the person is instead of any kind of representational, artificial, metaphysical violence of the state or social reality. It is inner territory that state is trying to transcode the social, political, any kind of group, public sphere, is trying to transcode this innerness of us to be just behavior. That's the problem, the inner and the outer. Inner is only individual. It cannot be divided, individe. It's something that it cannot be divided, it cannot be mediated through all public spheres and political discourses. So music creates this stronger inner subatomic center of subjectivity, and through the continuation into the public sphere alters all other subatomic subjectivities. So this jazz musician, Ornette Coleman, Archie Shepp, Pharoah Sanders, Amiri, Baraka, according to this Günther Husemann, the jazz book, a brilliant book, from ragtime to the 21st century. It's from Husemann. It's American historian of jazz music. So he said that these musicians in jazz, they were closer to the concrete folk musical harmonical freedom of the cries from the fields and archaic blues than to the abstract intellectual European tonality and atonality. Free jazz, they considered free jazz as a part of the same tradition. It's not a rupture. The freedom of free jazz was simply a freedom from musical system created in Europe, they said, with the emphasis on that created, formed in Europe. Formal and harmonical emancipation from the music of white continent, they said, as a broader racial, social, cultural and political emancipation. As Baraka said, process of breaking its strongest link with the European tradition. And what is this European tradition? The harmonic laws of music. Traditional system of functional harmonics. Because they created a space for freedom. Black slaves. Because individuals are mainly constrained by ideologies. And then you have only this subjectivity created in music to live free life. And that's why this instrumental music was most profound expression of this black community in America. But what I have in mind now to conclude the discussion, this authentical political being that emerged from immanent inner essence of music, not only to stipulate something that is put it into music from its outer transcendence, from the social conditions of living, from the territory that is completely transcoded and territorialized by the state governance. The subjectivity of the author is filtered and captured in some historical form, and this form continued to filter the subjectivity of the recipient. So, probably this is the concept of liberalism. Now we get to the point that liberalism is aimed, namely, development of the liberal state is a result of development of the individuals. But how could you create something that has political, public sphere relevance if you have only individuals that communicate through its personal existence, and this altered through the time and the duration, this alters subjectivity. German philosopher Schelling states that the freedom is the inner weakening of the impact of the state. If you create inner subjectivity, you are weakening the impact of the state. Music creates that door for us. Recreate such possibilities keeps our utopian consciousness alive. And that is the clue and authentic significance of the music and music creation, if we put all outer elements into the brackets. So, I'm going back to my first question. Can this music shape the revolutionary consciousness at all levels by itself without going into the realm of social and political reality? As an idea. Okay, we live in absolute control nowadays. If 2 guys, 3 guys make a decision to do a revolution, because the revolution is not protests when you want to change one government with other government. It's not a revolution. Revolution is a radical changing of the system. And usually revolution is connected with the leftist. For instance, Bakunin, the famous Russian philosopher and anarchist, when he escaped from prison, they've met with Marx in London. And they get into fight. Because Marx said, well, blah, 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 we need social workers to be a class that creates a time when we're gonna leave, or we're gonna kick the state out into the abyss. And Bakunin said, well, what are you talking? You are saying that we must keep another classes just to switch the classes, the rule of one classes with the rule of another class. And you told me that is a revolution. So the paths just splits after that. But how to change the social reality? Because we are not living only in this subjectivity. We are not as Leibniz monada. We are not closed. We are just open because we are personal. We have personal experience. Personal experience includes that you are open to other experience, the experience of the otherness. And we communicate, we created the language, we created the ethos. It's not only directed toward innerness, but it's also connected and directed toward the otherness. So if you want to put revolution as a, how to say, qualitative idea, the idea that really has its virulence to radical change, you must put it into the social relevance. So, for me, it is impossible for artists to create. That's why Jacques de la Rocha lived Rage Against the Machine, because they become what they were fighting against. The public just listen to music. For instance, a concert of Rage Against the Machine, 20,000 people. And after the concert, they say, okay, let's do the revolution. Change the system. Get to the government. Pick a fight with the army. No. nothing like that happened. They just listen music. They become a part of industrialization of the art. Now they're concerting around the world and make honorars to live. So, for me, it's absolute truth that is simply impossible to create social relevance only if you live in subjectivity. You must go outside. And this idea of the first song, Revolution, I just want to go against the Rage Against the Machine. And in lecture on Friday, I will speak about that going out and what we have out. The contemporary neoliberalism and capitalism. Are there any conditions out there to create a revolution? This liberalism creates a very specific psychological type of revolutionary. Because ideology creates psychological types. If you do not have a revolutionary type, you will never have revolution. The idea would never have any virulence in the outside world. So we're going to discuss about that. For now, I'm going to stop here with the conclusion to say that pure relation of music and politics, it's that music is instead of. It's our inner space and time for freedom. Thank you for your attention. We're gonna finish with one song. I love Depeche Mode. It's something that maybe the softer side of me, a little bit, transgenderic mood of me. So I love Depeche Mode, especially Playing the Angel. For me, it's the best album of Depeche Mode, Playing the Angel. But this is the song about the revolution, and you will see that the contemporary society creates idea of revolution only as mannerism, as an artistic mannerism, as some kind of pose. Now we live revolution in the way that we speak, that we pick a fight with our parents, in our minds that we want to kill our father. Dostoevsky, write it down, he was not afraid to admit that thought, that we want to kill our father. So it's some kind of inner spaces creates such a thing. But what about the outside world? Probably we are just living from revolution, from Rage Against the Machine and Tool, we just come to Depeche Mode and this kind of blah blah softened side, typical political blah blah bullshit about how we must create, how we must fight against the government and something like that. The lyrics are very instructive. So we're going to finish with Depeche Mode, and then we could discuss about these ideas of mine. Because I always want to discuss the ideas with other person. Because if you have yes, if nobody's speaking, then you're doing nothing. If you had no, negation, it's more relevant than approval. Ukončit. Connects. We use that word for and also. Well, where's the revolution? great song. Okay, thank you once again. Who will moderate?
Thank you, Riso, for your refreshing lecture and precise timing. I really think that we should have started with the Rage Against the Machine at 8:30. It would be perfect.
Well,
So, any questions? Comments? Suggestions?
Thank you for your presentation. My question is related to this topic of unintentional music. Because revolution is fully intentional. Music is something that is objectively far away from other arts. How do you link both? That one is full of ideology, the other one is in some way empty, but open for ideologies. How do you link both areas? Thank you.
For me or myself, probably if you have lyrics, then you have ideologies, and you use the background of music as an emotional background. That's the second level of connection. Probably the semantic meaning is intentional. But when you have music like jazz or instrumental music in European sonatas, Fur-Elise, if it's not written Fur-Elise, what does it mean as a music? It's a pure flow and interplay between forms and tonal form. That's Eduard Hanslick. It's objective, transcendent matter. But on the other side, Ernst Bloch said, no, it's pure human condition. Music, it's pure human condition. Because it's our utopian consciousness about something that comes. And it's connected with filtering ourselves, only as a humanity, also as humanity too. So probably, maybe the idea of art is not to be a pure political, it's not to have pure political engagement, must stay aside. But the writers, musicians during the history, they feel need to interfere with the world. So probably for me, revolution is impossible nowadays. Probably in all future of humanity, because we ruined the revolutionary consciousness. And I will speak about that on Friday, on that lecture. Because it's connected with liberalism. Liberalism creates individuals. You know, have you watched the movie Life of Brian? Monty Python Flying Circus? You know the situation when he's Messiah, and when you have, he's going naked on window, and a lot of people, a mob there. In one voice, you are the Messiah, you're not the Messiah, you're the Messiah. So Brian said, you are all individuals. And they say in one voice, yes, we are all individuals. It's irony. But individualism is some kind of abstract doctrine that doesn't bound us as revolutionary consciousness. That's the new way of leftists. They becoming a conservative. They want to conserve the state through this neoliberalism of contemporary left. So I will speak about that on Friday. This is some kind of lobby. I want to stay in lobby. And probably I will do PowerPoint on Friday because I want to confront myself all the time. The fact that damage nature of me. I'm referring to one song of Playing the Angel of Depeche Mode. Okay?
Okay, I have another question. My name is Babe, and I'm coming from Republic of Macedonia, from the University of Sveti Kirill and Methodi. So, firstly, I was like, ask you a question, but then a colleague of mine probably attached. I will be attached to his question, or I will just convert my question in a comment. Uh, I am interested in your personal thinking about, probably would be a kind of cliche, but is it still chance for the music to change the world? Okay, it's a cliche question, and if it's not, then where are we going? You know, how we must be, okay, just probably
Well,
then the comment will go on after your question.
Maybe I'm sure that change is the subjectivity of any person or not. Depends on person. Maybe it changed, I don't know, community of Afro-Americans because they developed the main element into American and British contemporary music. Without black and African elements, probably the 20th century will be very boring considering music. Because the European tonality finished with atonality, with Stravinsky, with Schoenberg, with Stockhausen. So this British and American music that stream directly from the archaic blues and creates rock and roll. Rock and roll is a folk music, but transposed on individual level. So probably they changed the 20th century, the change of the century. That was the name of. I think that it reflects, because everything is connected, but it cannot create political ontology. Liberalist neither. Because they are speaking about the absolute democracy. In the case of revolution, you must suspend it. You must suspend some elements of procedures of the democracy to do the revolution. It's very complicated things.
So where is the music there? Does the music has the power to do that?
No.
Then
It has no political ontology in itself. It only creates subjective innerness of the author and alters the subjectivity of the listener. It reflects the lives, but cannot create a condition for objective political ontology, because the revolution is a matter of political ontology. Artist is not obligated to do that.
but somebody has, because in other case, our future is not so optimistic, I would add. Thank you.
Probably all life of humanity was not, we were very optimistic about the 20th century. But it is the century with many wars that they were very hard. People died in those wars. And we are into the door of another war. All the time. We are optimistic, and probably optimistic person is not informed, pessimistic person. If I use one quotation from our professor, Ferid Mukic.
Okay, thank you. The next lecture, which I am really looking forward to, will start in 10 minutes. So be prepared and open your computers, and I'm expecting some surprise.
events, it's because I put some activities to that page of my project, and I hope that you will engage through the class, which is eventually that's for you, not only for me. We'll start with very short introduction. I want to understand why sometimes students are not, yes? Yeah, I'll just give you the address. It's here. It's Papal Authority. And then there's the domain of my home university. When you go there and you decide to, you click events, this one.
I'm really sorry. I need to write it down.
It's nothing. Yeah. Yeah. Just to other colleagues, there's a list of activities. We'll start with the intro, and then consecutively we will follow the order of tasks, which are simple and will show your approach to the material. So I hope that everyone's got the web page, and we can start with the simple check or a survey, a sonda, just click the intro and follow the questions, decide which one is yours. I'll give. Is it? Yeah, that's the question. Yesterday there were a part of the discussion that you could have an option to share your thoughts, but of course people are different, and there are different boundaries, I would say, personal but also technical and sometimes social, even social. So my question here is, what's your approach? It will help me to conduct this lecture, and I believe it will help me to complete the teaching through next 2 days. Sometimes people are just afraid of speaking English, which is normal because that's not our mother tongue. And especially in presence of those who are were born with English words. Oh, yeah, so the other option is that we're this kind of people that we don't like to speak publicly. Some can speak publicly but hate this kind of manner, just it's not their type. And of course, it might be a personal problem that we don't feel comfortable in the group with the group of people we're collaborating with, and other reasons. Just decide which one is yours. No. No. That now there's time for voting. You just click the link, and as an anonymous person, you vote. Yeah. I will show again where's the link. It's here. That's the web page. It's the intro link. Yeah. if someone found problems with that, I believe that at least this 3, 4 maybe you have to sign something or log in, I don't know. Yeah. So guys, I see that there is a problem with English mostly, and then other reasons. So probably your personal reasons, and they are not related to the kind of a character you present or your social interactions. That's the way I'll try to engage you through the class in a slightly different manner. You will use your computers and your mobiles to provide answers, and we will scaffold the class according to your ideas and thoughts that are present here on the screen. Okay, I think we can stop with this one. It shows that there is the predominant problem with being open to speak publicly in English. I will take that into account when asking questions. And now let me briefly go to the core of my presentation today. It's about decoding papacy. Yesterday we had no time to introduce you to the idea of banal religion, which is very nice concept in terms of understanding what's going on with religious issues. When we look through the internet and digital environment, and we see that traditional religious authorities and religious items, they just don't work in the normal, let's say, conventional way. Mediatization of religion, it's a quite complex term regarding different levels and different layers of social corp or these social entities. It works on the individual, collective, and on a massive level of society. But here I will narrow the term just to one issue, which is very important in terms of media, culture, and contemporary thinking about religion, religiosity, and religiousness, because we have to remember that religiosity is connected always with level of religious practices. Many of you might be religious in terms that you believe in something, but maybe you're not practicing. So level of your religiosity is none, although you are spiritual persons. Stig Hjevert, Mia Löfheim, representing Scandinavian approach, they try to conceptualize and finalize the term mediatization of religion, and the way that within this part that there is a media change. So there are some changes in communication in terms of technique, technological, and in terms of social manners. There is a transfer from this change in media to change in society. So if we will changing our media devices, our media tools, they immediately bring us option to change also a way thinking of social domains, especially religion, which is highly mediatized, deeply mediatized, as says Andreas Hepp. And this dissemination of religion which is mediatized goes mostly through banal religion. That's the most visible. If we respect some different layers of social identity and how does society work in terms of secularization, we can think that, of course, there are different societies. Some societies are purely religious. I'm from Poland, where religion is everywhere. You open the fridge and you see that there's religion. And I know that for some Czechs, Polish religion is like a Catholic Taliban. You're there, you're part of this business, and you realize that actually religion is just part of the social narrative, but it's not in people's heads, and it's not present, let's say, on the institutional level. It means that, of course, there is cross here and there, but being religious or not is not it is not determining the way we are actually collaborating with each other. Of course, a part of some extra cases like anti-abortion law in Poland. So Poland is so devoted and so religious that Polish women go to Czechia to get abortion, because of course in the motherland there's no option for that. And they don't think what's going on, that people from Czechia don't want getting abortion, that it's not your manner, identity, although there is an option for it. We have different types of thinking about religion. And the youth generation that is raised within this context loves religion which is banal. And the banal religion term means that there is the religious domain, there is the religious issue. Let's say there's a cross, so there's a meaning of religion, which means salvation, Christianity, and so on. And all those social and spiritual numbers, ideas, and connections are thrown away, and you see the item, but someone has banalized the meaning. We got the Pope and we got the Patriarchy of Russia. Here is the example of banal religion. Those two guys presented on the slide, in fact, they're representing evil sources from the cultural productions, like Pope Francis, who's the emperor, old and very bad Lord Sith, and Patriarch Kirill, who's presented here on the slide as Lord Vader. What does it mean? It shows that people are dealing with their authorities or authorities of their religious context in their very individual manner, and they are contaminating or changing the ultimate meaning of those figures. So we are disseminating this. That's just part of the business. The other one is that we are having our own religious items. And there is a very nice term called secular sacred, introduced by scholars from the UK and Finland, mostly Kim Knott, Liz Poole, Teemu Taira. Secular sacred means that there is a religious object working like a religious object, and there is another one, a secular object, which works well as a religious one, at least is treated as religious object. We can say that we've got beauty spa rituals. In the past, rituals were just identities and issues related to religion, to the cult, to what's holy. And we've got different options for that, especially that regarding that youth generations, mostly youth generations in Europe, they've got their own personal religion, indigenous religion, I would say. Those kind of everyday religious practices that they making you special and give you connection to what's something bigger. It might be God, it might be your, I don't know, absolute, it might be nature. You know well what's your approach. For some of you, having this ritual with the morning selfie, what's my breakfast and so on, that might be a secular sacred ritual. For others, to have a secular or sacred ritual, you have to go to the church and you seeing that there is something banal there, that you can offer a prayer, but you can also pay by card. Not coins, but cards. In Ostrava, there is a Catholic cathedral, and normally when you go to old cathedrals, you know that there are colorful stained glasses. In Ostrava, you will find screens. They can switch on screen with everything. And of course, it's helpful when we've got special guests and so on. We want to meditate, but sometimes it's also awful in terms of this very intriguing, at once creepy connection between everyday life and religious practices. You see the app, that's part of the slide. Once during my class, I tried to switch on a virtual Buddha temple. And something was wrong with the app. All the time when we switch off this app with my students, eventually it was broken. The sound couldn't stop. For 20 minutes, till I switch off my mobile, I heard Buddhist monks, sounds, whispers, charts, don't know how to call them because I'm not a scholar in this field. Here you go, a very short example of banal religion, and because I'm dealing with Pope Francis and his digital face, I will ask you to follow the clip and try to understand, also take some notes, where's the essence of banality, of banalization of the Pope Francis, and it's a copy of one of famous clips. So I just put a short part of it. I turn on, I think here. Yeah. So we had an example of banalization, And now I'll ask you to engage and take part in the short question quiz. Just turn on again the web page I ask you for, and there's task number 1. Click the task. We're here, so we've got a Padlet. It's anonymous. If you have an option to put your names, just find something nice like Fred Flintstone or something like this. Then we'll have the guarantee that everyone is anonymous. And just solve the problem. Describe the banal papacy. I'll give you 2 minutes. We'll see which kind of answer is the dominant, and we'll try to figure out what's going on, why we're going in exactly this direction or that direction. The term banal religion is a term showing that we are contaminating some religious and non-religious issues. It means that banal exactly here means that we are transferring the holy to something which is part of the popular culture, which is losing its authority and losing its traditional features. So we had cross, Pope Francis, exorcism, and something is going on with these items. If that helps, I will use also term trivialization, but of course that's not the original term, because the guy who invented banal religion was Stig Jarvert. He followed banal nationalism, a concept from England. Okay, we got 4 answers, and they go in slightly different directions, but at least 3 points might be pinpointed. First of all, the one that there is an issue of exorcism, which is trivialized. It means that we can use it to clips and so on. So the spooky atmosphere of this ritual is loosened. The other one, we got very important characters, priests, those who are fighting with evil. Here, in fact, they're doing their job in a very funny manner. We can say that church is like ghost fighters. Don't know whether you remember ghost fighters from the past. Very nice combination. I think it's a very nice idea that we see church and its old formulas and rituals like something that might be covered through the film and the movie plot. I click the link. There's something interesting here. Yeah, we have a very nice quotations from our host Renata Sedlakova and her work. Um, it's from Communication Today, yeah. So as you see, advertisement, which is in the beginning the very basic area of using religious objects as something that might be sold. That was just the beginning. Now it's part of popular culture. So there is a huge transfer. I don't know whether you are following the universal or the European quarrels about burqas, cross in Poland, veils in the Netherlands and France. There is always something funny there, although the topic is very, very controversial. Ultimately people try to get laugh at it. Maybe that's part of our nature. I'll get back to the presentation. I have a task number 2 for you. Just click on the task number 3, click the link. That's a very general question, mostly to students. What do you think? Well, when or maybe where will that finished? We had a Jesuit strategy, uncomfortable question, closed with another uncomfortable question. So I'll try to ask the question, do we need to meet and find some criteria against banalization of religion? I believe that for religious people of different denominations, mostly Christian, there is the commandment that you can spell or call your God's name. So probably that'll be transferred to internet connections, and your working on the internet and of course in the digital environment. If someone is not from this route, if someone is representing non-Christian values, probably banalization or trivialization of religion is just a matter of respect to those who are believers. So we intuitionally, we know that we've got some boundaries, and those boundaries are connected with the local law. Don't know how does it work in Czechia. In Poland there is a bill against blasphemy in terms of Christianity, and of course it's very vague to understand what's a blasphemy and what's not. Just sticking to your other comments, we don't need to end up, of course we don't need to do so, but we're looking for authorities, and in about 10-15 years probably you would like to find some kind of authority that would be stable. That's the domain of current times, that authorities are not stable and they are transformed through digital culture vividly. The other problem is that the role of the church is also not something which is, let's say, in a universal way, stable and comparable. I believe that here, role of the church is purely moral. You know, if we think outside the country, if we think about Czech's approach to religion, there is always this contradiction between the old cardinal from Prague, Duka, the past cardinal, the past archbishop, and Halik, Tomasz Halik. So different approaches representing different values and different ways of seeing religion and their place, religious place of religion in the society. It's just a matter of the practice. In some countries, role of the church might be banalized, and of course it's the ultimate answer of society how to deal with this church omnipotence. That's the case of Poland, that we are dealing with church here and there, and religious people are in some way tired that church is everywhere. I don't know how does it work here in Czechia. Of course, I respect that Moravia is different than Prague and so on. But we argue, or we're part of the quarrel, whether this kind of practice, digital practice, is offensive or not. That's always the solution. Now I will try to focus a bit on reflective thinking, which will be helpful after all. I'm quoting here Iona Silva Fletcher, and her approach to reflection. Reflective thinking is not just thinking. It's a process based on at least three stages. You are thinking about the past events. You are reflecting them. What was going on, what was the series of events, and how to engage those past experiences to the current problem. Then you try to observe and discuss, in some ways also describe the current problem, the issue that you are dealing with now. And then you see that there might be a solution for future, or you're looking for some kind of solution. So there is a difference between reflective thinking and traditional thinking. Traditional thinking is just a part of the discussion and thinking about the problem now. Reflection is containing the past and future engagement and results of the problem. And I would like you to think about religion and place of religion in digital sphere through reflective thinking, through reflection more than just thinking, just considering whether it's good or not, and describing the current shape of this idea, the phenomena. So we've got past, current, and future events. We have a sequence of events, and this sequence is based always on the basic question: what does this mean? Why people decided to do this and that? What will that bring to the future? And we got two approaches to reflection. One is basic approach in action. So you are reflecting exactly in the moment that the conversation is going on, and you try to reflect, you decide what should be the acting, and then you act immediately. Some people intuitionally, and because of their manners, they're exactly this type of person. So it's like ping pong. I think, I reflect. Maybe the shorter version is, of course, I think and I act. It's not a good option, especially in academia. I reflect and I act. That's reflection in action. And of course, some of us, we are much more, and there's the key term, reflective. It means that after the sequence of events, we are reconsidering what was happened. And then we try to put that to the current experience and see some solutions for future. And most of world wisdom says that this kind of reflection is a matter of age. But unfortunately, when I think about past generations, I know that they don't have option or the access to this kind of reflection in terms of digital society, because in many ways they're not digital natives. You are people from the digital world. For them it's something new, and it means that they can be a good nodal point in terms of reflection. Having that in mind, I will approach now 4 types of authority that are important for my understanding of Pope's authority, so the problem I'm dealing with. And if you got some background from sociology, political science, media, mostly social sciences, respecting that that was the field, the domain of sociology, we have traditional approaches in understanding authority. So of course the very basic is Max Weber's approach about role, that authority is a person, probably mostly the person more than institution, who can be distinct respecting 3 issues. And there might be a charismatic authority, traditional one, or legitimate. And just the traditional one, that's the one raised through the rural culture. Charismatic one, we know those figures from the past, that they were leading history. Another approach is the approach of power. It means that's the Foucauldian approach, which says that there is a scheme or someone scaffolds the society, that there are people who are ruling and those who are ruled. So we got different layers and options to rule people, and those structures enables us to be authoritarian. Then there's the very intuitional one, which I brought from philosophy. That's Bocheński's approach, that authority is a matter of relations, that we've got office, which is the object of authority, and we've got those who are following this object. In some way they are giving the object the legitimization. And the last one, which is a domain of your generation, and that's something special, it's new. That's Heidi Campbell's approach, that authority might be algorithmic. It means that we've got different affordances when we see digital platforms. And Campbell suggested that using digital platforms is being under the algorithmic authority just in terms of usability. It means that if Twitter gives you an option to put more than 100 signs, or Instagram offers you an option to communicate through your qualified self, so pictures, mostly pictures, not sentences, it means that this platform algorithm is in charge of your behavior. And this one, in some way, in contradictory to the previous I've mentioned, it's not very comfortable in terms of healthy society, because we are conquered by technology and we are ruled by technological models and ways of behaving. Click this, click that, do this, do that. We just follow commandments, and that's all. So that's the old approach. Now I will go to Catholic communities online. Parts of you probably are Catholics, and you'll see that you might be one of those digital groups, communities, that they're quite specific. Here I will use the Kolb cycle. Don't know whether you know the Kolb cycle. It's an option, a model for training and tutorials, which helps to understand notions, concepts, and ideas through 4 steps. Firstly, we will start with an experience. I will show some cases that are experientials. Then we will try to follow the reflection about objects that were presented through the experience. And then we'll have a part for experimentation. It's active experimentation. And the final one is the conceptualization. It means that we try to grasp everything at once. We grab the collection of thoughts and thinking done, and that help us to understand the concept we're dealing with. So the digital papacy, here exactly religious communities online. This slide shows that there is a matrix between different domains within the Kolb cycle. So depending which kind of person you are, results of your process is different. For example, if you are mostly watching and thinking, there is an option for assimilating. So you're absorbing knowledge, you're discussing that internally in your mind, but there's no evidence of your process in the environment. So we'll start with experiencing the traditional route. You'll see a clip, and after this clip we will have a question session, and we will discuss the issue of the traditional media outlet approach to popular authority. Why we do that? When you have this kind of media content, it's the one that it's the most important source of information for traditional Catholic believers or traditional Catholic digital media users.
Laudetur Jesus Christus, and welcome to Gloria TV News. The Catholic Register, owned by the Archdiocese of Toronto, published on November 30th an article about the Old Rite Priestly Fraternity of St. Peter. The piece carries the contradictory heading, Traditional Priestly Fraternity of St. Peter stresses unity with Pope Francis. The article quotes the fraternity's Superior General, Father Andrzej Kołorowski, saying that there is no possibility to get to heaven without being united to the Pope. There is very little likelihood that Pope Francis would agree with this statement. The article goes on quoting from a lecture Father Joseph Bisik, the fraternity's first Superior General, who was removed by the Vatican in 2000, gave in Ottawa on November 24th. This expressed that we believe in the visibility of authority and we are not Protestants. A hypothetical question: what would happen if an authority, blindly followed by those who do not want to be Protestants, leads them into Protestantism? Bisik even claimed that Archbishop Lefebvre entertained sede vacantes, saying that Paul VI was not the real Pope and thus the chair of Peter was vacant. According to Bisik, Lefebvre kept this opinion largely out of the public realm, quote, because most priests in the SSPX would have been scandalized. Bisik left the SSPX in
I will stop here and ask you to fill the fourth task. Sorry, first one, I think. So why there's something wrong with the Pope, according to this material? This is a piece of irregular news, which is in many ways a combination of information and commentary. And there's a lot of irony. It's ironic in terms of thinking and reflecting the Pope's office and Pope Francis' agency. So why there is something wrong with this Pope, according to these guys? It might be a very short comment. You can use just 1-2 words. I'm looking forward to seeing your answers, but by far there's nothing. Oh. This comment was, let's say, a bit general regarding the approach of media coverage in a global scale, let's say. So it's not exactly answer to my question, but there is a very awkward term, fake pope. So of course we use a fake news. If something is faked, it means that it's broken or it's not true. I'll leave that now and wait for your precise answer regarding the question, because I think it's more important now. You can pinpoint 1-2 sentences and it's okay. So we've got first answer that there is tension. It's called antagonism. I will talk about it later, which is natural part of the democracy. Before we receive next answers, I'll just stick to one part of this clip, which is pretty essential in terms of my ideas.
The article quotes the priestly fraternity of Saint Peter stresses unity with Pope Francis. The article quotes the heading, no priest stresses unit moves to heaven without being united to the Pope. There is very little likelihood that Pope Francis would agree with this statement.
Yeah, that was the most important part, I think. Because there's no other answer, I would just say that they're representing counterpublics to Pope Francis. Oh? Yeah, we got very nice answer that the counterpublics, which is very traditional, is representing a slightly different approach than the one presented by the Pope. So there's no option to be saved without unity with the Pope. That's traditional approach. And then there's the ironic comment of the presenter that it's not Pope's thinking about the issue. Through this short task, you see that controversial issues and controversial questions might be raised on the internet to accelerate people's approach to papacy, counterpublics in this case. And now we will see something which is slightly different. That's full support and in some way even an exhuming interest in the way Pope is dealing with his office.
Almost from the moment the smoke announced a new pope.
It looks right. It looks right.
Kind of dark, kind of light.
It's white smoke.
Pope Francis was smoking hot. Poking, kissing, patting, making the heart sign out of a helicopter window. He touched people and he let people touch him. Even played with his skull cap, from a papal mini-me dressed like the Pope to the 6-year-old who played peekaboo with Pope Francis on stage at the Vatican.
Nostri armadi.
Kissed the Pope's cross and wouldn't be lured away even by candy. When the Pope left his throne, the kid occupied it. Pope Francis was willing to clown around with newlyweds who volunteer for a charity that brings clown therapy to sick children. From silly to soothing, this photo became iconic. The Pope embracing a man with a genetic condition that left growths all over his body. 53-year-old Vinicio Riva described the hug.
I quivered. I felt a great warmth.
You'd expect the Pope to end up on the cover of Time as Person of the Year, but Rolling Stone, with the tagline, "The times they are changing," the Pope, he's just like us. We're not talking the voice of God. We're talking voicemail. Imagine getting a voicemail saying, "It's Pope Francis." When Spanish nuns didn't answer his New Year's Eve call, he left a message asking, "What are the nuns doing that they can't answer?" The answer was, "Praying." The Pope's image spread and was probably the first papal group selfie. He beheld his own image made out of chocolate by students at Chocolate Making Academy. Good Lord! The Pope even accidentally dropped an F-bomb. At a Vatican public blessing, he misspoke in Italian and corrected it.
In questo caso.
I never ever thought I'd have to bleep the Pope. In his first year, not only did Pope Francis wash and kiss the feet of others, he also had his own legs hugged. Gino, CNN, New York.
Now we'll deal with the task number 4. It's more or less the same question, but after another clip, we can ask why do they like the Pope so much? And we've got 2 answers by now, by far, so let's wait for your answers, and I will try to grasp those 2 approaches as antagonistic. Again, you see different directions of answers. But once, when we compare Pope Francis to Queen Elizabeth, there's no doubt that both authorities, both royalties, let's say, because Pope is also a royal, represent accommodation of the old values to the current situation, to the current context. Because British monarchy is so efficient in accommodating to what's going on now in Britain, they're still ruling the country. I see that through the course of your answers, you stressed that Pope is one of us and he represents another face of the church, which is much closer. So we got slightly different media newsfeed. We have a coverage of a guy who can swear, who can be a chocolate statue, and who deal very well with children. That's the humanistic approach. If I compare this one with the previous, we see that there's a Pope of expectations. He's the one that should be the ultimate nodal point of the doctrine, and without links with him, there's no option for salvation. That's very tough. And here's the guy who's representing a leading institution in the world, but this guy is funny, and he's one of us. So you see that there's no option for a common picture of those 2 coverages, media coverages, and they're representing newsfeed which is devoted to different digital users. Depending on which type of user you exactly are, different media newsfeed is transferred to your attention. That was the experience. We experienced different phases of Pope on the internet and in media coverage. And now we will transfer our attention to Catholic communities as something which is diverse. Because I think that we all run out of time, yeah? I'll start with that tomorrow. And now, just maybe someone would like to raise a hand, ask a question. Thank you very much. Enjoy your meal.